Reddit by Planet Reddit. Men of Reddit, what's your creepy girl story? Once, an acquaintance added me on FB. When I clicked on her profile, it said she was in a relationship with someone. That someone was a fake account of me with my picture. Oh, man. That sucked up. So, how long have you two been married since then? It's complicated. I was in New Orleans watching some street performers go crazy and a mom came up behind me and fully grabbed both of my behind cheeks. I was 18 and standing next to both of my parents and she said, "Hey, you remind me of my son," which is probably one of the weirdest things to say in that moment. I wouldn't want to be her kid if she's the kind of mom to full on grab her son's behind like that in a public place, no less. I wonder if she now tells him that he reminds her of a kid in New Orleans. Except his arms weren't broken. She befriended my younger sister just to get her to ask her to a sleepover. I woke up in the middle of the night with her laying in bed with me. I was 17 yo. She was 13. I know the majority of abuse happens when men behandle young women, but people like to pretend that young girls don't have sexual motive or agency. I cringe when I think of the sexy things I used to do at 13 to get a guy's attention. I had a crush on my dad's friend's son. He was 16 or 17. I'd do the whole lean over with a low cut top thing. I'd brush my behind against him in the hallway. One time I just fucking ran and tackled him over the couch. I was going to play it off as play wrestling. The worst I ever witnessed was at a barbecue party one of my girlfriend's parents had. We were about 15 at the time and one of our friends decided to unilaterally sit in the lap of this boy. He looked pretty cool with it and it only raised a few eyebrows. But she kept sitting there, talking to him, with her back turned. Weird, and the kitchen slowly cleared out. It was just me, the girl whose parents were hosting the party, and the guy and our girlfriend on his lap. She started grinding on him so hard that people from the patio could see, and he just had his hands out wide like I'm not doing anything. Poor guy was like 18 or 19 and obviously shy around girls BC. He didn't know how to say no. In elementary school I would meow at boys I liked because I thought it was sexy. Face with hand over mouth and rosy cheeks. Edit, no, I'm not Maureen LeMayo and unfortunately I don't get the reference. Also, I would do a hand motion like I was swatting my claws at them and swing my hips in a super exaggerated way as I walked past. Thanks for the awards. So you were that girl in my dorm. She had a crush on my roommate. My roommate clearly didn't like and told her several times. Things got out of hand and there were times where my roommate would come running back to the room yelling, "Lock the door. Lock the door," and moments later the girl and her friend would try to come barge in without permission. What's creepy is this next part. Apparently one night we accidentally left our room unlocked and she decided to sneak in and play rub our heads. We didn't wake up but her roommate told us what she did a couple days later. I haven't seen her in about a year and I'm quite glad. She rubs your head softer now. Impossible. I now work as a RA and know that she lives across campus. That plus I opted to get the room that takes 3 doors to get to my room. If she can make it past all my defenses I will humbly allow her creepily rub my head while I sleep. 3 doors, but only 1 window. Seriously though, that is fucking weird behavior from her. Stay safe. This younger girl who I never even spoke to once in high school had a crush on me. I got a note from her in my locker asking if I wanted to go out with her. I had no idea of how to get it back to her, so I just wrote no and taped it to my locker. Then she started following me everywhere. I would try to talk to her, but she would just keep walking away, pretending I wasn't talking to her. This goes on for like 2 years. Then I was hanging out by myself one day around the neighborhood, and she comes walking up with 3 guys who wanted to kick my behind for some dumb unrelated stuff. She somehow found out about it and brought them to me. After an embarrassing scene with me diffusing the situation with these angry gentlemen, they leave, and she finally sits down on the curb right next to me and starts flirting. All I could do was just stare at her enormous bangs with a WTF expression until she got embarrassed and left. She was ARPing a vampire dude. Could have shown her your main vein. LOL. Ah yes, the inferior vena cava. I was bored once at a small Local festival and didn't want to be there, so I just got a drink and started walking around aimlessly when I noticed a fire breather. The display was interesting and she was pretty hot. When she was on break she went to get a drink and we started talking. She seemed nice. We had a laugh, but her break was up and she resumed her display, so I left her to it and continued to wander around. 5 minutes later security was called to her display. Turns out some crazy girl whom I had never met before was following me around the festival and behindled the fire breather. She had claimed that me and Crazy, were together and fire breather was trying to break us up. Heh, she was hot. Did you ever go out with the fire breather? I did not. I've got two. First one was when I was 15. I was walking past my school and about to cross the road when a trio of drunk women in their 40s or 50s started hassling me about how good I looked, pressing me in against the wall and surrounded me so that I couldn't get out and holding me back while they copped feels. Not a fun experience, especially when you can't even tell people about it or how creeped out it's left you, because as a guy you should somehow be proud when women 3 times your age are grabbing your cock or throw your trousers against your will. The other one was about 4 years ago. I was 22 and asked a girl I'd met out. She seemed nice at first. Met her in a little cafe while I was waiting to meet some friends and we got talking about Pokemon and some other stuff for 20 or 30 minutes before adding each other on Facebook. Only weird thing was that in that time she told me she'd been raped by her ex. I thought maybe she was just being open about it as a way of dealing with the trauma, so I let it slide and messaged her a bit later to see if she'd be interested in a date. She told me that she already had a boyfriend but that she'd love to hang out as friends, which was fair enough, so I agreed to that and we met up a few days later. She'd brought her boyfriend with her, which I expected. I got the sense he wasn't too comfortable with me, which I can understand, but what threw me was she also brought her ex. I can't 100% say it was the same ex she'd mentioned, but he really gave off that vibe with the way he talked and behaved around her. She kept on talking about dead babies and abortions obsessively as well. You couldn't change the subject at all. Creeped me the hell out, so I just sat there with a smile and acted civil while internally going, please don't kill me, and I haven't spoken to her since. Not a fun experience. Especially when you can't even tell people about it or how creeped out it's left you, because as a guy you should somehow be proud when women 3 times your age are grabbing your cock or throw your trousers against your will. Yes, you can. Don't let BS societal norms stop you. I hate to say it, man, but it's a lot harder to talk about that kind of stuff for guys. Only experience I have is a buddy of mine went down to New York City to this weird costume party. He ended up getting tied up and raped by this big woman who was feeding him shots. He was super drunk and admittedly a small guy, he couldn't stop it. He was confiding this in me and 2 other mutual friends, and one of the other guys said, dude, did you come? He responded very skeptically, yes. The other 2 guys immediately started laughing and saying, if you came it wasn't rape. This shit still pisses me off to this day and I don't really talk to any of them anymore, but I remember trying to support my friend and argue with them, but it just seemed pointless. The poor guy felt ashamed and just stopped talking about it after. I agree with you there. Guys that are like Mancy and BR are terrible. I feel really bad for that kid too, because he didn't want that. Do you know if he ever said anything to like a school he attended or cops possibly? Not a guy myself, but one I dated had a couple fun stories. One was a girl he got set up with by friends on a blind date. As they went out to dinner, they passed a jewelry store, and she insisted on going in so they could pick out rings for when they get engaged. He paid for dinner and noped right out. The second one went better until he took her back to her place, where she went to the kitchen, pulled a nice big, sharp chef's knife, and told him he was staying the night. He said, I did what any red-blooded American male would do, agreed, but said I needed to go to the bathroom, where I promptly crawled out the window and never saw her again. I did what any red-blooded American male would do, agreed, but said I needed to go to the bathroom, where I promptly crawled out the window and never saw her again. My man. Dude knows how it is. After that setup, I was kinda expecting him to deck her while making eagle noises. After all, she was threatening his liberty. That's fucking terrifying. She attempted to kidnap and, probably, rape him at knife point. Seemingly normal looking attractive girl. Took her out on a date. We got drunk. Breaks down saying how she used fentanyl with her ex and ended up in hospital. Now she has to use a catheter and bag for the rest of her life as it ucked up her urinary system. She was screaming, "I have a drug-induced bladder disorder." She is 23. Cried. Tried to get me to finger her beside the catheter. Wasn't feeling it. Then decided I was the enemy and called cops saying I am behandling her. I recorded her as she went apeshit calling me names. Cops show up. She is having some sort of mental breakdown. She ends up transported to a psych observation unit at 1 AM. Ended up playing poker. Couple of days later she texts me and asks, "Wanna hang out?" Guess what I did? Edit, this is what I did. And those asking and DMing me if they can see the video. I probably will in time if I can edit out faces, names and any other identifying markers so you just see the screaming freak out. Not good at it so it will take time. Got married? And that, kids, is how I met your mother. Faked your death. Got a fake passport and now live under the behandled identity in a small fishing village in South America? I was at a friend's birthday party for her dog. Probably was just an excuse to have people over and get drunk. And another friend, let's call her M, is also there. I had known M for a couple of years, but I only really ever see her a couple of times a year. She is very drunk and also very married. Her husband was also at the same party. At one point in the night, she asks me if I have a girlfriend. I did not. If I am looking for a girlfriend, where I'd been looking for a girlfriend, etc. Then she says that I had been looking in all the wrong places and that if I wanted a good girl, I should let her know. During this conversation, she also kept trying to grab my hand. And so at one point I made sure to always be holding a handful of mini pretzels in both of my hands as a sort of excuse to not be able to hold hands. I can't hold hands if I am holding pretzels. Logic. Then finally she says, "I like you. I seldom wipe. I really like you." I'm like, okay. This repeats for a while until she says, "Stop saying okay. It makes me feel like you think I'm bullshitting." Then she keeps following me around the room and keeps trying to make me dance with her until I leave. Her husband was pretty much always in the same room as us, no more than a few feet away while this was all happening. Thought I was crazy and imagining it all until another friend asked me on the same night as we were leaving, "Was M trying to hit on you?" I can't hold hands if I'm holding pretzels. Modern problems require modern solutions. I'm so sorry for her husband. That poor guy. He was probably on board with whatever she was trying to do. I was like 13-14 years old, was playing Gaia Online, some lame social networking game from like 2002, and met some girl. We hit it off and started chatting over AIM. Definitely did the cringy cybering thing too. Well, eventually she comes clean that she's actually like late 20s, like 28 or something. Being a horny 14-year-old dude. That didn't bother me one bit. So then we start video chatting and she's like, fully masturbating on cam with me. Again, 14-year-old me is not seeing an issue with this. Eventually she starts talking about coming to visit so we can actually have sex. Again, not seeing the issue beyond the fact that she really was not very attractive, but even still I didn't think she was serious until she emails me a copy of her flight itinerary. At this point I panicked and blocked her. Deleted my AIM and stayed away from the computer for like 6 months and never heard from her again. Whoa, I would have called the cops after the ticket thing. Especially that you had evidence. Honestly, at that age I just thought I was gonna get in trouble more than anything, especially since this was on the family computer. That's the paradox of being a kid. You can't report people like that because then you have to admit your role in the events. Join our community Discord, link in description. During my last year of high school I would tutor students after school. One day about halfway through the year a new girl came in and sat next to me. The first thing she said was something along the lines of, "Do you wanna see my birth control?" She had an implant in her arm and showed me where it was. She then felt my arm and told me I was hairy. For the rest of the time she kept prying for personal info like who my friends were and where I lived. I didn't see her in tutoring after that. But one day during lunch she came up to my table where I was just chatting with my friends and inserted herself into the conversation before leaving randomly. I heard a few days later that she was suspended for either having drugs or a knife in her backpack. TBH, she sounds like socially awkward or something. Maybe she just wanted friends. I'm sorry to let you know this, but you will never get a name, comma. In elementary school there was a new Spanish girl who had a crush on me and would literally be non-stop staring at me and following me. Me and my friends tested it. In class they would look and see she'd be staring at me. In recess we went to the very far corner of the field and she followed. So I went back to the school wall and she followed. So I told the teachers and they finally got her to stop following me. She disappeared a few days later. Nobody knew where she went. She finally hit max level for sneak. Just because you can't see her doesn't mean she isn't there. Still following him around to this day. Met a girl online. We chat and set up a date. Date goes fine. She's a little weird, a little sheltered but seems nice. Not much chemistry but I think that can take some time so we give it another go, have a second date. Confirm I have no interest in a relationship with this girl on the second date so we talk it out, no hard feelings, let's be friends. Fast forward 1.5 years, I'm in my kitchen with some friends getting ready to go out for my birthday dinner when we hear a knock on the door. I go check and no one is there, but there is a box with my name on it. There is a card and some gifts, which would be nice if this girl had ever been to my house before. I had moved since our 2 dates and still have no idea how she found me. You can find out a lot with a phone number, a creepy amount. I started going to a new doctor. The receptionist was cute, so I flirted a bit in a waiting room with other patients around. It was pretty innocent. She reciprocated. I figured it was all in good fun. She escalated a bit. Stuff like scheduling me for days she was there, calling me directly with reminders, etc. Then she went into the records, got my cell number, and started texting me, telling me she wants to meet up. She's not happy with her husband. They never have sex anymore, etc. I noped out as fast as I could. In the US, this is a major crime. If she's treating your records this way, she's not respecting other people's privacy either. It is globally. A few months ago, I was walking home from school when this drunk middle-aged woman grabbed me by the arm, wrapped me in a bear hug against a wall, and started grinding on me. I wasn't interested. I had an exam the next morning, and I was just trying to get home. She wouldn't let me go, and she forced my hands onto her breasts and in between her legs. Luckily this was over clothes. She also started punching me for no reason, as well as saying doing extremely racist Asian stereotypes. I'm Asian. Eventually, I got away, but I've never fully recovered from the experience and I've basically never been able to talk about it with IRL friends. Doubt I ever will. Edit. Oh yeah, there was someone there who walked by who could have helped me. Instead, he turned away and got out of there quickly. He saw that I was uncomfortable and signaling for help, but he did nothing. You were subjected to a serious and frightening sexual assault where someone made you feel powerless. That's an awful thing to happen and I'm sorry it happened to you. It's hardly surprising you are struggling with it. Would you consider speaking to a counselor? It could help. Best wishes. Sorry to hear that you went through that. That was definitely sexual assault and no one should ever have to experience something like that. It was when I was back in school. There was this girl who used to sit just behind my seat. She was good looking but was very distant from everybody and talked with nobody. Her social skills was zero. But I tried talking to her. We get to know each other. I thought we became friends. We started sitting on the same seat. One day she said, "I know why you're friend with me." I said, "Why?" She says, "You want this, right?" Then she pulls her skirt slightly up and panty down and showed me the whose image is imprinted in my memory. We were 16 by the way. Then she giggles. I looked at her exhibition and then back into her eyes. I could see a psychotic smile on her face. She was the creepiest girl I've ever met in my entire life. Poor girl with such a warped sense of society. I wonder if she was abused. She might be on the autistic spectrum too. Those behaviors are common. Also, she could have been just nuts. Some people are nuts. No abuse needed. Man shrugging. Pretty sure she was good looking. Quite. Zero social skills. But ready show her body to a random person. No offense to you. But given the situation. Quite right. That doesn't happen in a normal family. This girl followed me home after a date and stayed outside my house, and when I came out the next morning and acted like it was Subaru funny we bumped into each other, I told her I will call the cops and she ran. Did she camp there? How much will that girl had to spend a night there? Those goddamn campers. They don't play Call of Duty how it was intended. Our high school basketball team had a female student manager. When we had games at other schools, she would always come up with a reason to need to get something in the locker room when we were showering. But we were so used to her, I guess no one said anything? Coaches probably should have stepped in there. That's not okay. How did she manage to get away with that? Because it's a she. Unfortunately, if it was a man he'd have been reported. Dude, that's full on perving on you guys. Totally not okay. Not a man but the creepy girl. My dad told me that when I was little and had something bothering me at night, I would sneak up to him and stare at him until he woke up. He described my white nightgown, plushie and the moonlight lantern light hitting me as very unsettling. My son would do that shit all to me all the time when he was little. Just in that almost asleep period. One time I just saw a shape next to me and I screamed, and he woke up and ran to his room screaming. Another time he walked in on my wife and I having sexy time with the lights on. He just started laughing and walked back to his room. I was so glad when he stopped sleepwalking. Oh my god, this is hilarious. Did your dad ever wake up startled, thinking you were a ghostly apparition or something? Do you think this post is potentially TMI and she might start up again if she realizes how you've duped her? It's been years since she's harassed me. I think she's moved on to other targets. Besides, her main attack vector is Twitter and I don't post much there anymore. Besides, I didn't use her name so I don't think she'd spot this Reddit comment. I've had a couple semi-stalkerish women who creeped on me, which is weird because I'm not even good looking. But my favorite creepy girl story was just a one-off funny moment. When I was 22, I was hanging out with a couple friends just grilling and drinking when one of them was suddenly like, "Do you guys wanna go to a costume party?" Naturally, we were like yes. So we slapped together some quick costumes and hopped in an Uber. We showed up to this place and it was less a costume party and more 6 people in an apartment wearing costumes. But there was beer and a dog so I was happy. Anyway, we spent the evening playing board games with this group of people who seem just as confused as we are. The entire night. There's this one girl who's sitting next to me on the couch but she hasn't said a single word. Not one. I don't think much of it. Some people are shy. It's whatever. But then, during a lull in the party, out of nowhere, she gets closer to me, looks me dead in the eye, and whispers "I like Bluewood," then shifts back to her spot like nothing happened. I turned to my friend and was just like, "We have to leave." I still think about that night sometimes. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.